Hi everyone. We're going to talk a little bit today about designing and developing your digital media project. So if we take a step back for a moment and think about some of the things that we explored at the beginning of this course, we talked about the importance of including digital media into our teaching. Just to think a little bit again about that, it definitely supports multiple intelligences. Not all students learn the same way, and when we include more opportunities for students to learn, we certainly reach more students. Including digital media projects in the classroom also promotes cooperative learning experiences. They often allow students to work together or at least to collaborate with one another as they're creating these projects. It empowers students, it reinforces real-life skills. The students that you're teaching are definitely going to have digital media as part of their world. They already do. So it's a great way for us to support them in the learning. It also supports the constructivist learning theory that students make their own meaning, that they can take what we're doing and combine that with what they already know and come up with something new to support their learning. When we talk about digital media, what are we talking about? We're talking about all of those things that we use to present information. All the different types of media, such as video, audio, animations, graphics, text, pictures, basically anything that you see on your computer. So the book that we're using for this course, Multimedia Projects in Education, provides us a particular model for creating these types of projects with students. It's called the Ddd E model, which stands for Decide, Design, Develop, and Evaluate. And when we're creating digital media projects for our students to engage in, it's absolutely crucial that we follow this model or another model that allows for enough planning for us to be successful. We perhaps have all had the experience where we come up with this great project that we think our students are going to love and that's going to help us teach something. And at the end of the day, we sit down at our desks and perhaps burst into tears, or at least think about, where did that really go wrong? Often we come up with an idea and we don't fully think it through what steps need to be in place for our students to be successful. The Ddd E model is set up to prevent that from happening. The text talks a lot about using this model to basically avoid disaster. It does focus our goals and our outcomes as a teacher so that we know that what we're asking our students to do. In the end, the time that we spend planning will pay off as our students get to work. The first step in this process is to decide. So when we are thinking about having our students do digital media projects, there are certain things that as a teacher you need to decide before the students get going. In all of these steps now, I've divided them up by teacher responsibilities, or what teachers are doing, and what students are doing. So in the decide phase, this is when you are really setting the stage. You need to figure out, what is the project going to do? What area is it going to be? What standards does it meet? What technology will you need to use? What technology will your students need to be able to use? When is that available? What do my students need to know and be able to do in terms of technology and other skills in order to complete this project? How will you assess it? If there are groups involved, how will you create those groups? How will you schedule work time? All of those kinds of issues come up in this first deciding phase. The students in this phase are brainstorming their ideas. Once you've explained the project to them, this is where they really get going. They think about the kind of content and the format that they want to include in the project, and they start doing their initial research. The second phase is the design phase. And here the teacher is kind of laying out the guidelines, providing any templates or additional information that students need to know, giving students opportunities to utilize or investigate a number of tools. Students at this stage are figuring out how they're going to design this project, how they're going to take their brainstorming from the previous step and actually make it a reality. So this is when they plan out, perhaps they do an outline. There are many different mind maps or storyboards that are included in your text that might be useful for students. They need to think about the layout, the design of the project, and if they need to create any sort of storyboards or scripts, this is the phase where this happens. The third stage of this process is where students actually develop the project. As a teacher, you are just sort of managing now. You're making sure that everything is going well, that students have what they need. You're doing ongoing formative assessment, which means as you walk around and help students or groups of students, you figure out what's going well, what's not going well, what help do they still need. The students at this point are creating graphics, they're producing audio or video, making animation. This is the point where they're really working on the project itself. The last step of the Ddd E model is evaluate. And this is where, as a teacher, you are assessing student learning. As a teacher, you're thinking about, okay, how well did this go? Did it go the way that I was hoping? What changes would I make in the future? Students in this point are editing their final projects. They're perhaps doing some peer editing, and they're also looking at some self or peer evaluation in terms of the overall project. So the decide, design, develop, evaluate process that we just talked about is a wonderful framework to use when you are setting up students to use digital media projects in the classroom. However, to practice that, we are going to use that same model as you create your own digital media project. So the project that you're creating for this assignment is one that you will be creating as the teacher. You don't have to have students do any of the creation of this project. So what should you do for this project? Basically, any sort of digital media that would be useful for you in the teaching of your own classes or your own courses is acceptable for this project. We have, of course, tried out and played with a number of different digital media tools already, and you're certainly welcome to use some of those and expand on what you've done with them. Although I would encourage you to try something new. This is a good opportunity for you to try something that you've perhaps been wanting to try out with your students or in your teaching that you just haven't perhaps made the time to do yet. So the first thing, of course, you're going to do for this project is to decide what it is you'd like to do. Think about the content area, what it is that you're teaching, and who you're teaching, who the audience is, which students you're teaching, and then identify the objectives or the standards that you're hoping to work toward as you are doing this project. You need at least one content standard or curricular objective that you will utilize in this project, and then select one of the National Educational Technology Standards for Teachers that you will use as well to guide this project. And then think about what sort of resources do you need to complete this project. Is there specific software or hardware that you need? Is there audio or video that you need? Do you have access to that? Can you create that? Are you going to be working with a new tool that you need a little bit of time to practice with? Think about all of those types of resources that are necessary for your project. Step 2 is to design the project. So create an outline of some sort. You may want to use a visual tool like a flowchart or a mind map to help clarify your thinking and get things organized in this step 2 where you're designing. Step 3 is where the action happens. This is where you're actually developing your digital media. This is where you're creating that presentation or recording that webinar or podcast or creating that curriculum web page or whatever it is that you have decided to do. This is where you put all of those great ideas into action and actually make it. Again, and I've said this in a variety of ways over this course, make this project something that's meaningful for you. try and make it something that you actually will use with students or with people in your work setting. Step 4, the last step, is to go back and evaluate. How did things go? What did you learn? What went well? What didn't go so well? Did the project meet those curriculum objectives or those standards? Did it meet the technology standards for teachers that you picked out? There are some questions for you to do in a one-page reflection that ask you to think about this project in terms of how well it went. So to wrap it up, for this digital media project, you need to create a project that you can use in your teaching. Make it meaningful, make it something that you can hopefully use with your students. I again encourage you to try something that you haven't tried before, because this gives you the time and the opportunity to try something that perhaps you haven't had the time to do before. In your digital project, I'd like for you to use at least 5 different graphic elements of some sort, 1 audio or video element, at least 3 web links, and any other elements that you wish to include. Now, some of those things may or may not work in the project that you've decided to do, so there's some flexibility there, but just to kind of give you an idea. The other thing I want to point out is we do have a video project that's coming up. So if you don't want to include video this time, you definitely will get an opportunity to use video at another time down the road. Your digital media project is due March 10th. When you submit it, you'll need to submit the project, the one-page evaluation reflection, and then there's a self-assessment piece for you to do on the rubric. So please make sure that you look at that rubric as you're working on this project so that you do know what the expectations are. I'm excited to see what you come up with. I'm sure you'll have wonderful, amazing things, and I look forward to seeing them all. Thanks.